Hare Krishna, this is Krishnadasa. Welcome all of you. In today's session, we are going to go through Shlokas 2.45 to 2.50. Before we start, I'll just say the prayer to the Guru. Om Agyanati Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalake Chakshuru Militamena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'll play the shloka. Please open your Bhagavad Gita and point it to 2.45. Okay? Okay, I'll start.
त्रैगुण्य विषया वेदा निस्त्रैगुण्यो भवार्जुन निर्द्वन्द्वो नित्य सत्वस्थो निर्योगक्षेम आत्मवान् यावानर्थ उदपाने सर्वतः सम्प्लुतोदके तावान् सर्वेषु वेदेषु ब्राह्मणस्य विजानतः कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफल हेतुर्भूमा ते सङ्गोऽस्त्वकर्मणि योगस्थः कुरु कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा धनञ्जय सिद्ध्य सिद्ध्योः समो भूत्वा समत्वं योग उच्यते दूरेण ह्यवरं कर्म बुद्धियोगात् धनञ्जय बुद्धौ शरणमन्विच्छ कृपणाः फलहेतवः बुद्धियुक्तो जहातीह उभे सुकृतदुष्कृते तस्माद् योगाय युज्यस्व योगः कर्मसु कौशलम्.
Hare Krishna, very profound set of verses. So I think today Alapji is going to read the translations.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
2.45. The Vedas deal mainly with the subject of three modes of material nature. O Arjuna, become transcendental to all these three modes. Be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. All purpose served by a small well can at once be served by a great reservoir of water. Similarly, all purpose of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. Perform your duty equipoised, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service, and in that consciousness surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad reactions even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of all work. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Alapji. So depending on which version of the Bhagavad Gita you are having, the wording may be slightly different, but the central idea is going to remain the same. I hope so. If you think yours is very different, let me know which version you have and I can guide you further there. So these are, again, as I mentioned, these are very set of very profound teachings. So material world has three modes of nature. They are sattva, raja, and tamas. Sattva guna is goodness, rajas means passion, and tamas means ignorance. Now these gunas, they are the ones that feed the ego, that are food for ego. And it is the ego which is binding the soul to the body. So this is how the mechanism of the spiritual science works. Now, of course, these modes affect each individual differently, depending on your sanskaras, depending on our previous lives, karmas, and all of that. And Krishna is going to explain the topic of gunas a lot more in detail in chapter 14. But he will mention gunas throughout the Bhagavad Gita. So, our soul is a tiny spark of God. We already discussed that. And God is beyond all these gunas. God is above all gunas. See, the Vedas, they provide us techniques and teachings on how we can transform or transition from tamas to rajas and from rajas to sattva guna. Now, Krishna is telling Arjuna that all the teachings, the goal is realizing God. The goal is self-realization. And because God is beyond all gunas, the ultimate goal is to rise above all gunas. So the teachings will take you from tamas to rajas to sattva guna. But then you have to rise above that as well. And that is how you realize God, because God is above all of that. And only when you are above that, you can realize that which is above all the gunas. So how do you rise above these gunas? It's very easy to say you have to rise above all gunas. But then how do you rise above those gunas? So Krishna says, Nirdvandvo nitya sattva to niryoga kshema atmavan. Nirdvandvo. Avoid getting disturbed by dualities of nature. See, Krishna is giving a beautiful prescription here. So it's a very methodical approach. So first, nirdvandvo. Avoid getting disturbed by dualities of nature. This is when Krishna explained to Arjuna why he should maintain samatvam and calmness of mind. Don't get perturbed by these dualities, profit, loss, victory, defeat. They are all dualities. Don't get too disturbed by them. That is the first requirement. Then Krishna says, Nitya Sattvastu. Always be established in Sattva Guna. Let that be your goal for now. That is within our reach. To always be in Sattva Guna. How do you be in Sattva Guna? We discussed that earlier. Always align with Dharma. Ask yourself what is the right thing to do. What is aligned with Dharma, and you align with that. That is how you remain in Sattva Guna. Then Krishna says, Niryoga Kshema. See, here the word yoga, it is used to mean to acquire. And Kshema means the efforts that we put in to preserve. See, it is our ego which keeps us busy running behind things. The ego wants to acquire. It wants this, it wants that. I want a big house, I want a big car. It's the ego that makes us run behind things. And then we keep worrying about preserving them. We first run behind things, and then we worry about how do we hold on to the things that we just acquired. It's a constant struggle. So Krishna says, discipline your mind to not run behind things like this or get too anxious about preserving those things. Because that is how you can keep ego under check. The ego keeps saying, I want. And if you keep feeding it, the ego only keeps getting stronger. So Arjuna says, this is how you keep the ego under check. Another very important thing to understand is this act of acquiring things and the act of trying to preserve them and worrying about preserving them. They are both a combination of Rajoguna and Tamoguna. So if we have to establish ourselves in Sattva Guna, we have to let go of things that are in Rajoguna and Tamoguna. So this is one of the things that you need to be taking care of. Because that is a prerequisite for spiritual evolution. Students of the previous batch, some of you may already remember this word, Yoga Kshema, because Krishna will talk more in detail about that in the 9th chapter. But for now, I think this should be very clear what that Yoga Kshema means. And Krishna says, don't do that. Don't try to run behind things or become anxious and worried about preserving them. And then Krishna says, Atmavan, focus on self-realization. So these are the steps Krishna says, how to establish yourself in Sattva Guna. The other thing Krishna will say, or Krishna says often, is all the knowledge of Vedas and various scriptures, including the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, we are all learning, but the intent of this learning should not be that I want to be a scholar, that I want to show off, that I can stand and talk eloquently, I can recite all Sanskrit Shlokas, That should not be the goal. What is important is we understand the teachings and implement the teachings to progress towards self-realization. That should be the question you should ask. So if somebody asks, how much of Bhagavad Gita do you know? The answer should not be, I know 400 shlokas by heart, because that was never the intention. The intention is, when somebody says, how much you know about Bhagavad Gita, your answer should be, I know what is required for spiritual evolution. I know what I should do. I know what I should not do. I know that I have to go towards Sattva Guna. And if I have to go towards Sattva Guna, I have to avoid running behind things. I have to understand that ego is what creates issues, so on and so forth. That is the goal. And this is what we called as Nididhyasan earlier. So the right way to study these scriptures, especially Bhagavad Gita, is Shravan, Manan and Nididhyasan. You are in this class. This is Shravan. You are listening. I'm very grateful to all of you for that. But then once the class is over, don't immediately switch to Netflix or YouTube. Spend some time in Manan, where you introspect. What did I just listen? And does it make sense? That is Manan. And it has to get into your subconscious that on a day-to-day basis, you are doing Nididhyasan. Nididhyasan is, you face situations in your life every day. And in those situations, are you asking yourself, what is the right way to react? What is the right way to handle as per the teachings of Krishna? If you can ask that question even a couple of times a day, then you are doing Nididhyasan. And if you are doing all three, then you are studying it the right way and you will go towards the right goal. And Krishna is also saying that the Vedas, they are like a tank full of water. But he says self-realization is like a flood of water. So when there is a flood, why would anybody need a tank full of water? Just like that, Krishna says, if you are focusing and progressing towards self-realization, then those teachings of Vedas are not required for you. Don't get hung up on that. That is Krishna's message. And then now comes the most iconic and popular verse of the Bhagavad Gita. People have used and misused this shloka so many times, innumerable times. Anybody who has even touched the Bhagavad Gita will talk about this one shloka. Okay, and I can tell you that when I was hardly 8 years, 9 years old, we used to have a serial in Doordarshan, Indian TV. And there, this is the shloka that was the title music of that serial. Okay. So, although I said that the goal of learning Bhagavad Gita is not to show off, it always helps to keep at least a few shlokas in mind. You should literally remember them, internalize them, and they are very helpful. So I think this is one such shloka that everybody who studies Bhagavad Gita should know. They should know this shloka by heart. So would you like to recite this with me? Let us recite this, and then maybe you can take a note somewhere and read it at home and try to memorize this. It's worth remembering. So you can say with me, I will break down this shloka into small words. Karmaneva
Karmaneva
Adhikaraste
Adhikaraste
Ma Faleshu
Mahavadeshu
Kadachana
Kadachana
Ma Karma Phala Hetur
Hetu
Bhurma Te Sangotsava Akarmani. Excellent. So this shloka, basically, if you say it in a flow, it will be Karmanne Vadikaraste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana Ma Karma Phala Hetur Bhurma Te Sangotsava Karmani. It's a very powerful, profound statement, which is a basis for most of the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, as well as a few other important scriptures like Bhakti Sutra and others. So what is Krishna saying here? Krishna is saying You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, and you should. But you don't have a right, or you are not entitled to the results of your actions. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, nor should you be attached to inaction. So many things Krishna has put in one sloka. If you simplify it, all Krishna is saying is, have the humility and the wisdom to realize that you are not in control. The sun is rising every day. The earth is spinning on its axis. The moon is revolving around the earth. The entire solar system is in place. It is not because we woke up and did something, right? We are such an insignificant, tiny speck. What are we in control of? Nothing. That humility has to come. So Krishna says, do your actions. In other words, let us say you want to help somebody. That is something in your control that you want to help. You can decide whether you want to help or you don't want to help. What is in alignment with Dharma, what is in alignment with Sattva Guna is you should go help. So go ahead and do it. But will that person respond positively? Will that person love you because you help that person? Will that person respect you because you help? That is none of your business, is what Krishna is saying, because that you cannot control. So don't be attached to the outcome. Just be focused on the duty. This is how you avoid repercussions of karma. How do you avoid generating a lot of bad karma? Is when you act in this mindset. This is one of the key lessons. Now, some very smart people come and say, I even remember when I was a small boy, I used to watch a cartoon called SpongeBob. And so sometimes they have some funny themes. So one of the themes was how to avoid. So in the Western philosophy also, they have this concept of cause and effect. You do something and you will have to experience the effect of whatever you did, right? So SpongeBob says, I'm going to not worry about cause and effect because I'm going to do nothing. I'm just going to sit and I will do nothing. So that is his aha moment, that he's figured out the philosophy of life. So a lot of people, especially people who are beginning to read spirituality or karma, about karma, they ask this question. So if I don't do anything, then I cannot generate any negative karma, right? So Krishna is saying, excuse me, you can't cheat the system like that. The universe is bulletproof. It is much smarter than you. So the last part of the sloka says, Sangotsava karmani. In other words, akarma means not doing what is right. That is also bad karma. If you are a father, taking care of your child is your duty. If you don't do that, that is also bad karma. So bad karma doesn't come just by doing something wrong. Bad karma also comes by not doing something that is right. So you have to play the game pretty wisely. And Krishna is giving you all the required secrets and steps for that. So you can reflect on your own life, or you can, if you have close friends, relatives, talk to them. It is guaranteed that all your heartbreaks, all your sadness, they have all come based on your expectations. Something you expected did not happen, or something you did not expect happened. These are the only two things. It will explain your entire life story. Every sadness you have had, every heartbreak you have had, can be categorized into one of these two buckets. And Krishna says, let us destroy that bucket. Don't have any expectations. So if you have no expectations, then you cannot have heartbreaks. Look around nature. This is my favorite example. God has created this beautiful Prakriti, this nature, and nature is teaching us a lot of these things that Krishna is teaching us. Nature is teaching by example. Nature doesn't speak Sanskrit, but nature speaks by example. See, for example, the flowers, they bloom every spring like clockwork. Do they care what happens after they bloom? The honeybees, they are gathering honey all the time. Do they really care who gets to enjoy the honey? The birds, they are singing. Do they care who is listening and who is appreciating? It's only humans who have this big problem of expectation. Why? Because we are the ones with the biggest ego. Okay. So we want to control everything. And that is Krishna's message. Don't get into that mess. Everything in nature practices verse 2.47. If you look around, we are the exception. And we call ourselves smart. So again, my question is, why is it difficult for humans to not have expectations? When even tiny animals and birds can do that, why is it so hard for humans? Yeah, you have the answer, right? Ego. Our big, fragile ego. In fact, our ego makes us think that we can control even God. I know people don't we do that sometimes? We go to a temple, we have a menu, we have a price list. I'll pay you $15 or I will pay you $10 if you do this for me. And I don't know how many people know Marathi, but we have a very, very famous poet in Maharashtra. His name is Pula Deshpande. He very beautifully said, लोक देवळात जाऊनही बाजारात गेल्यासारखं वागतात, 4 आटणे देऊन काही ना काहीतरी मागतात. Basically, you go to a temple and you treat it like a transaction. You are controlling God. You are putting a price on God. You are telling God, I'm buying your favor. I pay you 10 rupees and you do this for me. That is our ego. So Krishna starts this teaching to Arjuna saying, first control that ego. And how to do that? First he says, don't run behind things. And don't worry so much about preserving those things because they are all acts of ego. And that is how you start controlling the ego. And then perform your actions. Don't have expectations. You further control the ego. And then you are aligned and you are on the path to self-realization. Even in Buddhism, they say ego is a big problem. There are a lot of parallels between what Krishna teaches and what Buddha has taught. In fact, it's more technical. If you read the Buddhist text, you will see that they have explained it even a lot more technically. I'll try to simplify that. I have the text here. I'll share it in the notes. But what Buddhism says is everything in the universe is interconnected and interdependent. For example, if you look at the entire solar system, the sun is important, but so are all the planets. And so are all the moons. For example, if our moon moved even by 10%, humanity won't exist. So everything is interdependent, interconnected. So in this kind of a setup, the notion of individual, independent, like we always feel like we are unique. That doesn't make sense, is what Buddha says in very technical terms. He says, look around you, look around the world, look at the universe. There are countless things and everything is dependent on everything else. What makes you think you are only a lone star, like you are only like something very unique? So it doesn't make sense, Buddha says. It is delusional if you think like that. Now we come to Pragma 3. Pragma 3 says, always choose rightful action over inaction. Never be attached to the results of your work. Krishna is very clear. Krishna says detachment is the way for a happy, painless life. Now we can practice Pragma 3. It is easier to practice Pragma 3 once we have some mastery on practicing Pragma 1 and Pragma 2. So I hope you remember what is Pragma 1, Pragma 2. Anika ji, you want to remind us what is Pragma 1, Pragma 2?
Yes, Vinay Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So the first Pragma says that one must recognize the saboteur within themselves. They shouldn't give in to it. Rather, they should confront it and vanquish. So our inner saboteur is the thief. And like all thieves, its biggest fear is getting caught. So when we become aware of our thoughts, we can recognize when our saboteur is playing games with our minds and we can control and defeat it. We can catch hold of this inner saboteur by being an observer and analyzing things without getting attached. That is by viewing scenarios in the third person's perspective. But all of this demands controlling of the mind. But how can we do this? We can do this by controlling and sharpening our intellect. So here in the Bhagavad Gita's cover, we can see Krishna is holding the reins to 5 horses, and this is Arjuna, and this is the chariot. So the 5 horses represent the senses, the reins represent the mind, Krishna the intellect who's controlling the mind, Arjuna is the Atma, and the chariot is our body. So how is all of this beneficial? It purifies us and we can march towards spiritual progress with humility and lack of pride. And all of this will help us achieve liberation even when we are alive. So to sum up, we need to sharpen our intellect by reading scriptures, accepting and following a guru, and being devoid of ego, which in the process will help us vanquish the saboteur with the willpower which can be attained by controlling our mind. Now, the second pragma, a calm mind is essential for achieving liberation. Learn to handle both pain and pleasure calmly. So, Krishna had mentioned in verse 2.14, Matra Sparshasta Kaunteya, Sitoshana Sukha Dukkada, Agami Payi no Nityas Samstitikshasva Bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer season. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So performing our duty without expectation, that is Nishkama Karma Yoga, is the key to spiritual progress. This can only be achieved with a calm mind. Shri Krishna emphasizes that keeping one's mind calm, irrespective of their external situations, is essential for karma yoga. And this is because negative karma occurs when our mind is controlled by our negative emotions, which arise when we are overwhelmed with our surroundings. So to quote from Vinay Prabhuji's notes, calmness of mind combined with selfless actions aligned with our duties shields us from a generation of negative karma and takes us toward liberation. So there's this Mataji, whose name is Kishori Jani ji, who explains all of this with an example. So just as the sand at the cusp of the sea, that is at the seashore, moves to and fro with each wave, similarly we get swayed away in this material world with the adversities and good times we feel. But we should be like the sand in the deep sea, who despite facing all challenges remains unmoved. Hence, if we are spiritually grounded in depth, we can easily attain samatvam, that is remaining equipoise. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Hare Krishna. One round of applause. Excellent. Super impressive. Thank you, Anika ji. And I hope this all makes sense. So these were the 2 pragmas we already covered. So practicing these will help us practice the 3rd pragma that we just went through. So if you do those 2, then you will be able to perform your actions without attachment. It will come very easily. So that is pretty much what Krishna is saying. And Krishna is saying, be steadfast in the performance of your duty. And don't be swayed by success, failure. These things will come and go. Don't get disturbed or perturbed. And Krishna clearly says that the evenness of mind, the calmness of mind, that is yoga. Yoga is not necessarily holding your nose or holding your toes. Yoga is all about reaching that state where you are calm, equipoised. So one of the examples I like to give is, imagine you are flying somewhere in a plane and there is a storm outside. I'm giving this example because I faced it myself. Now, we cannot stop the plane and we definitely can't stop the storm. So what is the point in getting all anxious and worked up? Because you need to be calm. You need to listen to what the air hostess is saying. What are the instructions? How do you remain safe? How do you protect your co-passengers? All that is possible only if you are calm yourself. If you are totally going haywire, then you are a cause of injury for your own self. How can you help anybody? So that is what Krishna is saying here. And Krishna says, once you maintain that calmness, once you are able to achieve that state of mind, that is yoga. So Krishna says one more aspect here of developing that kind of calmness of mind is through the study of Sama and Dhamma. Sama means control of mind, and Dhamma means control of senses. So once we practice Sama and Dhamma, we achieve Samatvam. See, basically, whatever I'm saying is going to strike a chord with all of you, because we are all normal human beings so far. So many times we say things like, if only I get that car, I will be so happy. If only I get that big house, I will be so happy. If only I get that cool job, I'm going to be happy. What else the mind says on the opposite spectrum? What if I get into an accident? What if I lose all my money? What if I fall sick? Correct? So, the problem is this if only and what if. We are always running between these two endpoints. If only, if only, if only. What if, what if, what if? So Krishna says, don't get into this nonsense. Try to focus your time on God. Try to focus your mind on spiritual development and trust. Have faith in the process. If you are aligned with Dharma, if you are aligned with rightful action, then you are doing what you are supposed to do, and then don't fret about the results. That is how you maintain Samatvam, and that is how you practice Sama and Dhamma. So my advice is, if some of you have small children at home, I mean, this is not my advice in the sense it's not my personal gyan. It is something that great sages have said in various forums. Is one of the best things that you can teach them is this aspect from a young age. How do you teach them? Because when they are very young, don't try to just give everything they ask you. I want this chocolate, I want that toy, I want that pencil, I want that pen, I want that book, I want this, I want that, I want that. It's never ending. We all know. Anybody who has have children, we all know how it goes. It's a never ending list of I wants. We should learn, or we should try and say no to a few things. The key is not saying no. The key is training the child to not get upset when you say no. If you can train the child that way, that even when you say no to something, the child is not getting upset, then you are actually creating a yogi. Then that child will have a very successful life from a spiritual perspective, even material perspective, because you are training the child to have samatvam. That even when I say no, you shouldn't expect me to all the time say yes. You should be happy even when I say no. Are you able to do that? Train them. The young age, the best training parent can give to the children. Because attachment is the cause of pain and suffering. And later on, we will study more on this topic. It's a deep topic. The topic is, you cannot base your relationship with God or with Guru. Conditional relationship doesn't work. See, I'll tell you, most of us, we fail. We don't reach our goal spiritually. Most of us give up spirituality. Do you know why? Because God doesn't behave the way we want God to behave. We have expectations. God, yesterday I prayed that there should be no rain. Today there is rain. You didn't listen to me. God, I prayed that my visa should happen within 2 months, but it took 4 months. You didn't listen to me. Conditional. That is why a lot of us are not able to have this strong faith in God or progress spiritually. So Krishna says that attachment is a problem. So you cannot have a relationship with a guru or a God which is based on conditions, because you will be disappointed. See, there is another very important aspect of acting without attachment. It's very beautiful and very profound. So I use the word profound a lot because Bhagavad Gita is very profound. every other shloka just hits me very hard, and I feel an aha moment every time I go through them. So bear with my repetition. What is karma yoga? Karma yoga means it is yoga of service, yoga of action. What does service mean? Service means giving. It's an act of giving. That is what karma yoga is all about. A true karma yogi is very charitable, very generous. They are the real karma yogis. But when we perform an action with expectation for a particular outcome, that is not a mode of giving. There the mindset is taking. Because you are not focusing on what you are giving, you are focusing on what you are going to receive. That is what expectation is all about, right? So Krishna says, isn't it nonsensical that you want to be a karma yogi, but then you are having the opposite mindset? A karma yogi is supposed to have a mindset of giving, but you are having a mindset of taking. Then how can you ever be a karma yogi, or any yogi for that matter? So Krishna says, don't have attachments to results, because that makes you a taker and not a giver. And that is why Krishna says, people who perform actions with expectations, they are misers. Because that shloka is not very clear if you just read the shloka. The shloka just says, people who perform actions with attachments, they are misers. Why Krishna is using the word miser is because when you perform actions with expectations, you are in a mode of taking. And taking is a function of misers. Misers always take, they don't give. So that is why Krishna is saying, don't do that. Otherwise, you are like a miser. And Krishna is advising Arjuna, yogastha kuru karmani, act without attachments and develop evenness of mind. And Krishna again tells Arjuna, rise above all gunas. And Krishna has given a very concise direction also for that. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ube sukruta duskrute. The wise people united with yoga abandon both good and evil deeds in this world. Therefore, strive for yoga, which is the art of skillful action. Here, in this context, yoga means union with divine, which can be achieved through the practice of meditation, self-discipline, self-awareness. And once a person achieves this kind of union, they are already transcended good, bad, ugly, everything. So I would like to quote Swami Vivekananda on this topic. He says, those who work without any consciousness of their lower ego, they are not affected by evil, for they work for the good of the world. To work without motive, to work unattached, brings the highest bliss and freedom. This secret of karma yoga is taught by Lord Shri Krishna in the Gita. This is what Vivekananda has said about this particular teaching of Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita. So it's very important to realize that even good karma, if performed with attachment, it will prevent us from getting liberation. Only by surrendering to Lord Krishna and performing our duties without attachment to results, that is the only way that you can free yourself from this endless karmic cycle. Just the only way. Because if you don't follow this one key advice that Krishna has given, then there is no scope of liberation. You are going to keep getting, because the law of karma is very complex. It is not easy, because what may seem bad to you may seem good to somebody else, and it's very tricky navigating that. You may think you sit and meditate. I'm just sitting and meditating, so I'm generating only good karma. But when you breathe in, you are killing millions of germs. Now, is that good karma? Is that bad karma? How do you know? It's extremely tricky, that whole topic. So Krishna says, the way to navigate through this is first stop having attachments and stop having expectations to outcomes. Because that is what is first going to help you deal with this complex karmic algorithm, karmic theory, whatever you want to call it. Because unless you do that, how can you get liberation? That is Krishna's message. So I hope this all makes sense. Hare Krishna, thank you so much. Truly grateful for your continued satsanga. With that, I can open the floor for any questions. Would you like me to stop the recording before you ask questions? Because in the previous batch, people used to always say,
Yes.
first stop the recording.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'm stopping recording. Okay.